Right. So good morning to all of you. Sorry about that. So good morning to everyone. Yeah, so let's begin today's lecture. So in the last lecture, we were basically so we have started looking at this abstraction, right, of a machine which is called this deterministic finite automata, and we have formally defined what a DFA is. We have defined what a language of a DFA is, and we have seen some examples, right, of given a DFA, how to recognize what is the language that's accepted by this DFA. Uh, and we have also seen an example of how to formally prove that that the language of a DFA follows certain properties. Okay. So in the last lecture, we were also trying to, towards the end of the lecture, we were also trying to see how to design DFAs, right, which accept a given language. So if you are given a language, as languages that are accepted by DFA are called regular languages, and so given a language, right, with some property, right, uh, how do you design a DFA which would accept such a language? Right? So in the last lecture, we were looking at this example of a language, right, which consists of binary strings, right, strings which are formed out of the binary alphabet 0 and 1, such that the number that's represented by this binary string, right, is divisible by 3. We're trying to see how to design that DFA. So before we go back to that example, I thought that we should also try to see, right, whether or not there are some generic principles which we can follow when we are trying to design a DFA, right? And also look at some simple examples of how to design a DFA which accepts a given language before actually going to this example of numbers which are divisible by 3. Uh, okay, so are there any questions regarding the last lecture? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's begin today's lecture then. So so how do you design a DFA? Right? So in general, it's a creative process. It's just like programming. So if you want to write a program which performs some task, right, then there are various ways in which you can program. Right? So you given a task, you can do the same task in many different ways. Right? So it's a very creative process. Right? So there are no fixed set of rules. Right? But having said that, there are some points which we can keep in mind when we are designing a DFA which needs to accept some language, right? So in particular, right? So how does a DFA function, right? So you should think, so when you're designing a DFA, you should think from the perspective of the DFA, right? So the DFA is going to scan the strings, right, from left to right with one symbol at a time, right? And in particular, it does not know, right, when the string is going to end, right? So it may happen that the current symbol that the DFA is processing may be the last symbol, right? Or there may be more symbols to come, right, to the right of the string. Okay. So or in the suffix of the string. So since the end of the string is not known, right, the DFA, the automata, must always be ready to accept or reject at every step. So which means that for every symbol that you scan, you must know, right, whether or not the current string, right, that you have processed, uh, should it be accepted or should it be rejected, right? So this depends on the property that you want your DFA, the property that you want the language of the DFA to satisfy. Okay. So given some property that you want the language of the DFA to satisfy, you scan the string one symbol at a time, right, from the perspective of the DFA, and at every step, right, you must know whether or not the string that you have currently processed follow obeys that property or not, right? So that you can decide whether or not to accept that string or to reject that string, because the DFA doesn't know, right, that are there more symbols to come. And the second important property is the limitation of this DFA, right? That we only have a finite amount of memory. Right? So in general, right, you could for example store the entire string itself. Right? So in the sense that you can maintain the entire string that you have seen so far, right, as a state in the DFA, but that doesn't but that is not feasible because DFA has finite memory. So you only have a finite number of states, and the strings, right, a string. a string can be of any length, right? So there is no bound on the length of a string. So that's why you can't maintain the entire string that you have seen. So you must only maintain some necessary information about the string that you have seen so far. And so this is the information that is required to judge whether or not the string should be accepted or rejected. Right? So the key in designing a DFA is how to figure out what is the necessary information that you need to maintain, it, depending upon the property or the language that you need to accept. Okay, so these are the two main things that we need to keep in mind when we are designing a DFA. Right? So to illustrate this, let's look at a couple of examples. Okay, so let's say that so this is the language that I want to design a DFA for. Right? So here the strings are from the binary alphabet 0 and 1, and I want to accept all those strings that have an odd number of ones. Right? Okay, so this is the language that I want to accept. Right? So what are some example strings, right, of this? Right. So for example, so one is something that you can accept, right? And let's say, right, so let's say 100 is something that you need to accept, and 1011 is something that you need to accept. And so on. Okay, so in general, right, there are many such strings that this language has, right? But the property that every string in this language is that it has an odd number of ones. Okay, so let's see how we can go about designing a DFA which accepts this language. Okay? So the first thing to know, right, is the main thing that you need to know is what is the property that that you need to maintain, right? Or what is the information that you need to maintain if you want to judge, right, whether or not a string has an odd number of ones or not, right? So you don't need to store the entire string to figure out whether or not a string has an odd number of ones or not, right? So in particular, right, you only need to know what are the number of ones in the string, right? In particular, you only need to know whether or not the number of ones in the string are odd or even, right? Because so let's say that if you have scanned some string, right, and you know that the number of ones in the string that you have scanned so far is odd, right? Then when you see the next one, it will become even, right? Similarly, if the number of ones that you have scanned so far is even, then when you see the next one, it will become odd. So you only need to store the parity, right, or the parity of the number of ones that you have seen so far in the string. Okay, so there are only two possible states there, right? So you have either seen odd number of ones or you have seen even number of ones, right? So now that you know this information, right, that you only need to that you only need to maintain this parity, right, of how many ones you have seen, that would give you the states of the DFA. Right? So the DFA consists of states and transitions, right? So this knowing what is the information that you need to maintain about the string gives you an idea of what should be the states of the DFA. Right? So in this case, right, as I said, so we need two states, right? So we need a state where, let's say, we have seen an even number of ones, and we need a state where we have seen an odd number of ones. Okay, and now that you know the states, right? So next you need to figure out the transitions between the states. Okay, so let's say that I have seen an even number of ones so far. Okay, then if I see the next one, then I'm going to then I'm going to go to the odd state, right? Because then the number of ones will be odd. Similarly, if I see an odd number of ones so far, and if I see another one, then I will go to the even state, right? Because then I have an even number of ones. And zeros don't really matter, right? So that's why there will be a self loop for 0. Okay. And then, right, so now that we have the states and the transitions, we need to figure out what's the start state and what are the final states. Okay, so what is the start state, right? So the start state is something that the start state should be the state where the property holds for the empty string. So this is where you will begin your processing. Right? So when you begin your processing, you have not seen any number of ones. So which means that you're seeing zero number of ones. So which is an even number. So that's why even will be the start state, right? So that we can express by this incoming arrow without any source. And then what is the final state? Right? So the final state will be the state uh, which you end up in, then those strings you will accept. Right? So since we want to accept strings which have an odd number of ones, so that's why odd is going to be our final state. Right? So we can express this by drawing this double circle right, around. So this then is the DFA. Whose language, right, is this language that's shown above, right? So it only accepts strings which has odd number of ones in it. So this is how you can go about in a methodical fashion, right, of constructing a DFA, right, for given a particular language. So are there any questions regarding this example? Okay, it's good. So let's do one more example. Okay. So let's say that suppose I want to design a DFA which accepts this particular language. Right? So the language of the DFA should be the set of all strings which are formed out of the binary alphabet, but it must contain the 001 as a substring. Okay. So if I want to design a DFA, right, which accepts this language, right, then as I said, the very first thing that you should think about is are the states of the DFA, right? So for which you need to figure out what is the information that I need to maintain uh, if I want to judge correctly, right, whether or not a string contains 001 as a substring. Right? So in particular, right, if you're scanning a string, okay, and you want to find out whether or not 001 is a substring, so you can ignore all the ones that appear at the beginning of the string, but you need to know whether or not you have seen a zero. So as soon as you see the first zero, it could potentially be the first zero of the substring 001. Right? So you need to know, okay, I have seen a zero. Similarly, you need to also know whether or not you have seen the next zero as well. Because that information is required if you want to know whether or not 001 is part of the substring. Right? So you need to know whether or not you have seen a zero, whether or not you have seen a 00. Right? And similarly, you need to know whether or not you have seen a 001 as well, right? Because that's the string that you would then accept. Okay. So then this will give you the states of the DFA, right? So this DFA is going to have 4 states. Okay. So we will have when you have seen nothing so far. Okay. And then we will have a state where sorry, yeah. Okay. So you will have a state where you have seen a 0. Then you have a state where you have seen 00. And then you will have a state where you have seen 001. Okay. So now, okay, so I have also added this, arrows here, but the arrows are not necessary. So this is the start state. This is where you have seen a 0. So and you have seen 00, and this is where you have seen 001. Okay, so these are the 4 states of the DFA. And once you figure out the states of the DFA, once you figure out the states of the DFA, you then need to figure out the transitions. Okay, so let's say that you begin in some state. Okay, and then whenever you see a 0, right, will go in the state where you will remember that, okay, I've seen a 0. Right? If you see another 0, then you will be in a state where you've seen 00, and if you see another 1, then you will be in a state where you've seen 001. Okay. Uh, so now similarly you finish all the rest of the transitions as well, right? So what if you are in a state where you have seen 0, okay, and then you see another 1. So okay, so in that case, so now that you have seen a one, right? You can't really, so no extension of that string, right, is going to contain 0 1 0 0 1. So if you have seen a 0, next see a 1, then you need to sort of reset back, right, until you see a 0 again. Similarly, from the start state, right, if you see a 1, then you can just remain in that state itself. Okay? And if you have seen a 0 0, okay, and if you see another 0, then you already seen 0 0, right? So that means that you are basically going to remain in that state itself. Okay. And then once you have seen a 0 0 1, it doesn't really matter, right? So since the string is already going to be accepted, so you will have 0 and 1 here. Okay. Right, and then what's the start state and the final state, right? So in this case, the start state is the first one, and the final state is the last one. Okay. Yeah, so I think this seems correct to me. Yeah. So this is the DFA whose language will be the set of all strings which contain 0 0 1 as a substring. Okay. Uh, okay. So now let's look at this example, right? So let's say that okay. So let's say that I want to design a DFA whose language is this set of all strings, right, from the binary alphabet, such that if you view this binary string as an integer, right, then it's going to be divisible by 3. Okay. So so how should we go about designing this DFA? So again, right, let's start from the let's follow this methodology that you have been following, right? In the sense that first we will figure out what are the states of this DFA, right, that we need to design. So what is the information that we need to maintain about the string that we have seen so far? Right? If we want to know whether or not the string obeys the property, right? So okay, so in particular, right, so this DFA is going to have 3 states, right? Let's name them as 0 1 2, right? And these states are simply correspond to the remainders of the integer when it's divided by 3. So since we are interested to know whether or not an integer is divisible by 3, right? An integer is divisible by 3 if its remainder is 0, right, when it's divided by 3. Right? So there are 3 possible remainders that you can have if you divide a number by 3, right, which are 0 1 and 2. So let's say that these are the 3 states that we maintain. Okay. Uh, so the way to think about this is that if you have seen a string so far, right, then you look at the integer corresponding to that string, and in particular you look at what's the remainder if you divide that integer by 3. So there are 3 possibilities, and depending upon what is the remainder, you will be in that corresponding state. Uh, and the start and the only final state is going to be the state 0. Okay. So let's draw this DFA then. Okay, so I have 3 states, right? 0, 1, and 2, and these correspond to the remainder of the integer when that integer is divided by 3. Okay. So let's try to figure out what could be the transitions of this DFA. Okay. Uh, so let's say that you have string. So let's say you have seen some string W so far. Okay. And the string W, right? So you're seeing this string W in its binary form. So let's say in its integer form, it's the number I. Okay, and let's say that this I, when it's divided by 3, it leaves the remainder 0. So which means that this I mod 3 is equal to 0. So this is also what we need. So let's say I mod 3 is equal to 0. Okay. So this notation W underscore 2, right? I think you can view this as W in its binary form, which is equal to I in its decimal form, right? And you know that this I mod 3 is equal to 0. Okay? So we are trying to figure out what is the transition from this. What are the transitions from this state 0? Okay? So let's say that the next symbol, right, that I see is a 0. Okay, so which means that the string is W0. Okay. So now what can we say about the string W0? In particular, what can you say uh, about the decimal representation, right, of the string W0? So how is the decimal representation of W0 related to the number I? Anyone? Yeah, yeah, okay. So a couple of you have said 2i, right? So that's correct, right? So in decimal representation, this number is equal to 2i. Okay. So now what is going to be 2i mod 3? So I know that I mod 3 is 0. So what is 2i mod 3? So I, when divided by 3, gives you 0. The remainder is 0, rather. So then what about 2i, right? So when you divide 2i by 3, what's the remainder that you will get? Yeah, again, yeah, that's correct. Right? So you will get 0. So which means that this W0, right, in its decimal format is going to have remainder 0 when divided by 3. Right? So that's why you will have this transition uh, from the state 0 to 0, right, on seeing a 0. Okay, so, now let's repeat this uh, for every other state and symbol, right? So what about W1? Okay, so let's say that the string that I have seen is W1. Okay, so what is its decimal representation? Yeah, 2i plus 1. That's correct. So its decimal representation is going to be 2i plus 1. And what can you say about, so if I mod 3 is 0, then what is 2i plus 1 mod 3? Yeah, so yeah, that's correct, right? So it's 1. Okay, so that means that this string W1, right, is going to represent an integer uh, whose remainder when divided by 3 is going to be 1. Okay, so remember that we are trying to keep track of these remainders uh, in the states of the DFA. So this means that there's going to be a transition from 0 to 1 with 1. Okay. And so now you can sort of do this calculation for every other state as well, right? So let's do this very quickly, right? So let's say that you are in the state 1, okay, and you see a 0 next. Okay, so what should be the transition from the state 1 when you see the string 0? Okay, 2, right? That's correct, right? So because so if the remainder is 1 so far and you are doubling the integer, right? So then the remainder is going to be 2. Okay. And what about when you see a 1? 0. Yeah, that's correct, right? So if you are in the state 1, right, and you see another 1, so that means you are doubling it and then adding 1 to it. So this means that the remainder is going to be 0. Okay. And let's do this for the state 2 as well, right? So if you are in the state 2 and you see another 0, then what's going to be the next state? Okay, 1. That's correct. Right? So if you double it, then you get 4, whose remainder is 1. Okay, so that's why we will have 1 here. And then what about the last one? Right? So if you are in the state 2 and you see a 1, uh, then what's the next state? So if you are in the state 2, right, and you next see a 1, yeah, then you will remain in the state 2 itself, right, because it's doubling and then adding 1, so you get 5, and then 5 mod 3 is 2 itself. So right. So this is and so let's now see the start state and the final state. The start state is this one, right, and the final state, as we already said, is this one, right, because we only want to accept strings which are divisible by 3. Okay. So this is the final DFA for all those whose language is going to be all those strings whose integer representation is a number that's divisible by 3. Yeah, so this is the explanation for the various transitions of the DFA, and this is the final DFA that we just derived. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So I hope that this has given you some sort of handle, right, of how to go about designing a DFA for given a language, right? So it's a creative process. You can do this in your own way, right? So in fact, in the last lecture, right, a number of you gave a number of suggestions, right, of how can we go about designing this particular DFA by looking at some specific patterns in the strings that were to be accepted. Right? So you can go about it that way. That's fine as well, right? It's a creative process, right? So whatever is it that you're comfortable with. Okay, so I have a question that epsilon is not divisible by 3, but it is still part of the language. Okay, that's a good question. Okay. Well, I mean, you could say that the decimal representation. Yeah, that's what Vikram is.
We could introduce
Yeah,
a initial state, and if there is any number, then we'll start. Yeah, add a dummy starts.
I see. Okay. Yeah, we could do that as well, right? So if you see a 0, then you will go to 0. If you see a 1, then you'll go to 1. Will that work? So if you add a dummy start state here, right? And this is going to be the new start state. Okay. And then if you see a 0, you go to here. You see a 1, you go to here. Okay. I think this is going to work. Yeah, you could do that, right? Or you could say that the integer representation of epsilon is 0. That's also fine. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, so as I said, right, so you can go about designing a DFA in whichever way that you're comfortable, right? But do make sure, right, that you follow these guidelines, right? So don't just think about the patterns and the strings and so on. Think about what is the information, what is the key information that you want to maintain when you're designing the DFA. That will give you the states of the DFA, and then once you have the states of the DFA, figuring out the transitions is not that difficult. Okay. Right. So we are going to end the section on DFAs now. Okay, so let's move to the next abstraction that we are going to see, which is a non-deterministic finite automaton. Okay, this is very similar to the deterministic finite automaton in the sense that this is another abstraction of a machine that has a finite memory. But the only difference is that we allow non-determinism in the design of this particular automaton. Okay, so in particular, what is non-determinism? Right? Remember that in a deterministic finite automaton, right? If you're in a particular state and you see a particular symbol, then you can only move to one possible state. Okay. So there is a fixed state, right? There is a fixed transition that you can make from a given state when you see a given symbol. Right? So that's the criteria that we're going to relax in a non-deterministic finite automaton. Right? So in particular, in a non-deterministic finite automaton, if you are in a given state, right, and you see some symbol, then you can move. Then you have a choice, right? So you can move to various possible other states. So the next step is basically going to be a set of states, and you can choose between any one of those set of states. In particular, it could also be the empty set. Right? So which means that you may decide not to move anywhere. Right? Or that is to say that you'd basically get stuck as well. Right? If you are in a given state and you see a particular symbol, right? Or that could be a choice of states, then you can pick any one of those states. So what this means, right? Uh, the ultimate sort of effect of this is that a non-deterministic finite automaton can be in several states after processing a string. So because after every symbol of the string, you can be in multiple states, which means when you process the entire string, you can be in several possible states, right? After you process the string. And this, the way this happens is that the transitions from a state on an input symbol can be to any set of states instead of a fixed state. Okay. So in particular, right? So there are going to be a set of start states as well, right? So there are going to be multiple start states. So you can so whenever you want to process a string, right, in a non-deterministic finite automaton or an NFA, then you will start in any one of the start states, right? And you're going to accept that string if any sequence of choices leads you to a final state. Okay? So which means that at every step, right, of processing the string, you will have various choices, right? And you sort of you will sort of guess, right, what is the choice that I can make that's going to lead me to a final state, right? And if there is any sequence of choices that will lead you to a final state, then the NFA is going to accept that string. So the NFA is going to reject the string only if there is no sequence of choices that's going to lead you to a final state. Okay? So in particular, we can imagine it like this way, right? So let's say that a string is accepted by the NFA, which means that the NFA is always going to guess, right, what is the right choice to make, such that that string such that processing that string will lead you to a final state. Okay? Uh, that's how, and so that's how we determine whether or not an NFA accepts a string or rejects a string, and that's how the language of the NFA is also going to be determined. So in order to illustrate this, let's look at an example. Okay, so let's say that I want to I want to model the chessboard, right, using an NFA. So in particular, I want to model the moves on a chessboard using an NFA. So here's the chessboard, right? So this chessboard consists of squares, right? And the squares are colored, right? So these are colored both red and black, and so each square of this chessboard is a state, right? And so you will begin from the start state, right, which is the starting square, which is, let's say, 1, and at every step, right, you are going to move, right, to some other adjacent square. So that's going to be the change of state. Okay. And at every so whenever you're in a square, right, you have multiple choices of where to move. Okay. So yeah, this is how we are going to model the chessboard, right? So the states of the NFA are going to be the squares on the chessboard, right? And the inputs, right? So there are two inputs, right? Either R or B. So when you say the input is R, it means you can move to an adjacent red square, and if the input is B, then you can move to an adjacent black square. And the start state and final state are in the opposite corners, right? So one is the start state, and final state is N. Okay, so whenever you are in the state 1, right? So let's say that you are in state 1, so this is a black square. So now if the input is R, then you can move to the adjacent red square. Okay, so note that there are two adjacent red squares here, right? So there's 2 and there's 4. So there's a choice here, right? So whenever the input is R, then I can either move to 2, right, or I can move to 4. On the other hand, if I am in the square 1, right, and if I get a B, the input is B, then I can only move to the adjacent black square, which in this case is just 5, right? So there's just 5 that's adjacent to 1, and that's why I can only move to 5. So in particular, right, the entire transition table, right? So this is the alternative representation of the finite automaton in the form of a transition table. So this transition table is shown in the figure, right? And you can see that, so for example, if you are in the square 2, right, then if the input is R, then you can move to an adjacent red square. So there are two choices here again, 4 and 6. While if the input is B, then you can move to an adjacent black square, where for which there are three choices, right? So there's 1, 3, and 5. All of these are black, and they're adjacent to 2, right? So at every step there are multiple choices, right? And suppose so the starting state here is 1, and the ending state here is 9, right? And on a given input, right, uh, you want to figure out whether or not you can reach from the starting square to the ending square, right? So since at every step we can make multiple choices, right? Uh, so given an input, right, there are going to be multiple final states. So rather, there are going to be multiple states, right, which you will end up in after processing that entire input. And in particular, right, for any of these choices that you make, if you end up in the final state, then this particular input is going to be accepted. Otherwise, it's not going to be accepted. So, yeah, so this is how one can think about where this non-determinism sort of creeps in. That's whenever you have multiple choices at every step, right? Uh, then you have to model it using non-determinism. Okay. Yeah. So here is the example, right? So let's say that I want to process the string RBB. Okay. So I begin from the start state 1. Okay. And then when I see R, right? So then I can move to just in red square. So there are two choices here, 2 and 4. So now from 2, if I see the input B, then I can move to the adjacent black square. Okay. And so there are 3 adjacent black squares. These are 1, 3, and 5. Okay, yeah, it's come up now. And similarly, if I'm in the state 4, and if I see B, then there are 3 adjacent black squares there. So these are 1, 5, and 7. So these are the states that I can possibly be in 1, 3, 5, and 7 after I see the input RB. And then if I'm in 1 and I see B, then what are the possible next states that I could be in? Right, so that is these are all the black squares. So this is 5. Yeah, so you can process the rest of the states as well, right? So these are all the states that you could be in, right? 5, 1, 3, 7, and 9. After processing the entire string RBB, and in particular, the state 9, which is the final state, is also there, right? So which means that it is possible, if you make the sequence of right choices, right, to move from the start state to the final state on processing the string RBB. So that's why the string RBB is going to be accepted by this particular name. Okay, so let's try to intuitively think about why we need this non-determinism. Right? So non-determinism typically arises due to abstraction. So remember how we defined abstraction. Right? So abstraction is what happens when you're trying to model a system and you leave out certain parts of the system, right? So you don't model every small part of the system, but you leave out some information and you only model the essence, right? The main characteristic or the main property of the system, right? So in this case, the model is going to incompletely represent the system. It's going to leave out certain information, which means that that's where non-determinism is going to creep in, right? Because you're leaving out certain information, so you don't know. Since you don't have all the information, right? If you had all the information, then you could make a deterministic move. But since you don't have all the information, there are some choices, right? That possibly creep in, and because of these choices, you get non-determinism. Right? So the chessboard example, right? So for example, we could have defined a more expressive alphabet, right? So instead of just saying that the alphabet consists of red and black, right? Let's say I define this alphabet, which is this north black, south black, east black, west black, northeast red, and so on. It's in general direction and color, right? This is the alphabet that I defined, where direction could be north, northeast, etc., and color is either red or blue. So now notice that if you are in a square, right, and you see one of these symbols, right, then there is only one choice that you can make. So for example, if it is not red, then I can only go to the adjacent square that's in the north of me, and that's colored red. Similarly, if it's south red, I can only go to the adjacent block, to the adjacent square that's south of me, and that's colored red, and so on. Okay. So in particular, right, at each input, I no longer have a choice now. Right? So there is a deterministic step. That there's a fixed step that I can take if I'm in a given state and I see a particular input. Okay. But since we have abstracted out direction, right? We have abstracted out direction in order to make the language, in order to make the model simpler. Right? But by making the model simpler, we have introduced non-determinism. So now that I see just a red square, I see that there are multiple possibilities, right? So this red square could be in any direction around me, right? And because there are multiple choices, there is non-determinism. Okay? So that's where non-determinism creeps in, right? Because of abstraction, but we should also think about this from the point of computational ability, right? Because the entire purpose of doing this exercise, right, is we want to find out what is it that we can compute, right, using a given abstraction of a machine. Okay, so in terms of computational ability, right, adding non-determinism may also make the machine more powerful, right? Because it can do more things, right? It has multiple choices at every step, right? And maybe it can accept more languages as well, right? Maybe by adding non-determinism, we may be able to construct machines which can accept more complex languages, right? So in fact, the famous P is equal to NP problem, right? So this problem asks exactly the same question, right? So this P is polynomial time and NP is non-deterministic polynomial time. So in particular, it asks whether or not if you can compute something in polynomial time, right? And if you can compute something in non-deterministic polynomial time, then are they the same, right? Are they the same things, right? So for every non-deterministic polynomial time algorithm, does there exist a deterministic polynomial time algorithm? Right? So this is a major open problem in computer science, right? And we'll also take a closer look at this problem towards the end of the course, right? But so there are 2 points that I want to take away from this, right? That I want all of you to take away from this. Right? So one is that non-determinism is added due to abstraction, but it may also increase the computational ability of the given abstraction of the machine. Okay? And in general, right? I mean, real world systems cannot model non-determinism. Right? So real world systems, computing systems, are deterministic, right? And that's why this problem of computational ability arises. Right? So if you add non-determinism, then does it make the machine more powerful, right? Or is there a deterministic counterpart whenever you add non-determinism? Okay? So that's sort of an informal view of the non-deterministic finite automata. So are there any questions so far? Okay. So let's make things a bit more formal by giving a formal definition of this non-deterministic finite automata, right? So the main structure, right, of this non-deterministic finite automaton is very similar to the deterministic finite automaton. So in particular, this is also going to be a phi tuple, right? It consists of Q, sigma, delta S, and F, right? So in particular, this Q is going to be the finite and non-empty set of states. So since this is still a finite automaton, I only have a finite number of states. Sigma is going to be the input alphabet. Now this delta, so here we are using the capital delta instead of the small delta. So just to differentiate it from a deterministic finite automaton, right? And the signature of this delta has changed now. So this delta is defined as a function from q cross sigma to 2 to the power q. Right? So 2 to the power q is the power set of q, right? So it's the set of subsets of q. So what this means is that if you are in a state and you see a given symbol, right? Then you have a set of states, right? To which you can migrate to, right? Or to which the machine will go in, right? So this is how we are modeling this choice, right? The non-determinism, by saying that there are a set of possible states that the machine can go to when it's in a given state and it sees a given symbol. And as I said, right, so there are going to be multiple start states as well. So this S now is a subset of Q. So this is a set of start states. So and 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 this F is the set of acceptable final states. Okay, so here is an example of an NFA. Okay. So this NFA has 4 states. Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Q1 is the start state, and this non-determinism, right, is apparent here in the state Q1. Right? So if you look at the state Q1, then yes, Vineet has a question.
Sir, why do we have multiple start state in non-deterministic finite automata and like just single in finite automata? Like why is there
So,
such?
okay, so you're asking for sort of intuition behind why we have multiple
Yes,
start
sir.
states.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, see, this is again another way to model non-determinism. So, since I mean, adding multiple start states doesn't really change the computational ability, because you can always add a dummy single start state, right? And then you can have a transition to any of the start states, right? But as I said, right? So we want to model this fact that when you process a string, the machine can be in a set of states. So that's why we say that okay, this machine itself can begin an execution in any of the start states, uh, and at every step there's going to be non-determinism. Right? So to model this fact that at every step there's non-determinism, we say that okay, there is going to be a bunch of start states as well, right? So that even at the beginning you have many choices.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Okay. Okay, so as I said, right, so as I was explaining in this example, in the state Q1, right, on the input 1, you have two different possibilities. Right? So you can either stay in Q1, right, or you can move to Q2. So which means that this delta of Q1 comma 1, so let me write this down. So this delta of Q1 comma 1 is basically the set of states Q1 comma Q2. Okay. Yeah. And so the rest of the automaton is, so also notice that once you're in the state Q4, right, there are no transitions out of Q4. So which means that, so this delta of Q4, comma 0, right, is actually empty set. Similarly, delta of Q4, comma 1 is also the empty set. Right? So this is sort of saying that that the machine is getting stuck once it gets to Q4, right? So there are no more transitions that you can make to any other state uh, once you go to Q4. Okay? So so what is the language that's accepted by this NFA? Can anyone figure this out? Okay, Vikram is saying X1 A B Y, A01 B01. Okay, Vinith is saying length 3 excluding starting zeros. Okay, any more suggestions? So remember that a string is going to be accepted by this NFA, that if you process the entire string and you must end up in a final state. Okay, so there's only one final state here, which is Q4. So which means that if you process the entire string, right, and this is non-deterministic finite automaton, right? So you can process it in multiple ways, but as long as as long as you can, there is one sequence of choices that you can make, such that if it goes to the final state, right, then this string is going to be accepted. Otherwise, it's not going to be accepted. Okay, Madhu is saying one at the third last position. Okay, so yeah, that's very good, right? So that's actually correct. So this the language of this NFA is yeah, it basically accepts all strings whose third symbol from the right is 1. Okay, So the reason is that, so let's say that you have a string whose third symbol from the right is actually 1, right? Then, so this is a non-deterministic finite automaton, right? So at some point, right, this automaton is going to guess that, okay, so it's processing the string from left to right, and at some point it's going to guess that, okay, yeah, this next symbol is going to be the symbol that's the third last, right, from the string. Okay, that's the third last, right, from the end of the string. That's the third symbol from the right end of the string. So at this point, right, it's going to make this transition from Q1 to Q2, and then it's going to see exactly 2 more symbols, and it's going to go to Q4. Okay. Now there are going to be some guesses which are wrong, right? So which means that the machine may incorrectly guess. Right? Let's say it's not the third symbol from the right? So let's say it's something that's much earlier, right? So the machine is going to guess incorrectly at that point, but then it's going to get stuck at the state Q4, right? So once it goes to Q4, it has not seen the end of the string, right? So there are still more symbols to come, and in which case it will basically be in the empty state, right? So the so it will no longer be in a final state, right, when it sees the rest of the when it sees the rest of the string. Okay. So there are many. So the point is that there are some sequence of choices which will not lead you to a final state, but there is one sequence of choice which will lead you to the final state. If the string has one, right, in its third symbol from the right, so the third last symbol is one, and if the string does not have one in its third last symbol, then there is no sequence of choices that's going to lead you to the final state, right? Because if you're in state Q1 and if you see a 1, only then do you make the transition to Q2. But if you see a 0, then you're going to remain in the same state. Uh, so that's why the string is going to accept all those strings whose third symbol from the right is 1. So we will look at this more formally, right, how to formally define the strings that are accepted or rejected by the NFA and what's the language of the NFA. Okay. So the question from Vinit is, what will be the transition from state Q4 using 1? So there is no transition, right? So this delta of Q4, 0 is the empty set. So you will just go to the empty set. So it won't be called invalid, right? So you will just end up in the empty set, right? So this will become more clearer when we define this extended transition function, right? Delta hat. So far we have only seen how this NFA is going to react to every symbol, right? But when we see so we will then sort of extend this definition to see how this NFA is going to process the entire string. And so once you end up in this empty state, right, or in this state, the state set which is empty, then you cannot make any further transition. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll end the lecture today then. Thank you.
So can you stop the recording?
Yeah, you can stop. Thanks, Atul. Let me just do it.